After my wife insisted that I go home early from the party, I was about to leave when I heard her moaning from one room. Be me, 31-year-old Richard Thompson. Working as a successful corporate consultant in Boston, never liked these fancy corporate parties. They're always loud, fake, and exhausting. But tonight is different. My wife Elizabeth insisted I come. Not just a regular insistence. Half plea, half command, you know the type. It's important to me, Richard, she said. Her tone left no room for argument. So here I am, nursing some overpriced whiskey I don't even like. Standing in this pretentious rooftop lounge at the Meridian Hotel. Place reeks of wealth and fake smiles. Elizabeth is thriving, though. Always been her element. Queen of the room. Her laugh carries across the space. Bright and perfect, like everything else about her. Head thrown back. Her silver designer dress catching every light. People flock to her like moths. Used to love watching her like this. Tonight something feels wrong. Can't shake this knot in my gut. We've barely spoken all evening. Just a few clipped words here and there. Don't just stand there looking bored, Richard, she snapped earlier. When I tried talking to her. Tried to socialize for once. Then she vanished into the crowd. Left me standing there like some forgotten prop. Hours dragged by slowly. Tell myself I'm imagining things. This unease in my stomach is nothing. But it isn't. Around 11:30, I've had enough. Ready to slip out quietly. Let her find her own way home. Heading toward the exit. That's when I hear it. Muffled laughter from the hallway. Near the private restrooms. First thought, probably just some drunk couple. Looking for privacy. Almost ignored it. Almost. But then I hear her voice. Soft. Breathy. Unmistakably Elizabeth. Freeze in my tracks. Heart pounding so hard I might pass out. Slowly creep toward the sound. Party noise fades with each step. Don't want to believe what I'm hearing. But deep down, already know. There's a rhythmic thumping sound. Low murmur of voices. Her voice. When the door opens, my world shatters. Man steps out first. Adjusting his blue silk tie. Has this smug grin that makes my blood boil. Don't recognize him. Don't need to. His disheveled Armani suit. His flushed face. All the evidence I need right there. He doesn't see me as he walks past. For a brief second, think maybe I misunderstood. Maybe this isn't what it looks like. Then Elizabeth steps out. Her hair is completely messed up. Designer lipstick smeared. She's laughing under her breath, muttering something I can't hear. When she sees me standing there, her smile vanishes, replaced by something sharp and defensive. Richard, she says, her tone clipped and cold. What are you doing here? Just stare at her. That's what you call it? She doesn't respond. Just keeps walking. Back straight. Steps quick and purposeful. Call her name again. Louder this time. Heads turn, but I don't care. Let them stare. Let them see. When she finally stops, she spins around, face a mask of irritation. Can we not do this here? She hisses, grabs my arm. Her manicured nails dig into my skin. You're making a scene. A scene? Laugh bitterly. You think this is a scene? What was that back there, Elizabeth? Her expression flickers for a moment. Fear, maybe, or guilt. But just as quickly it hardens. You don't know what you're talking about, she says coldly. And even if you did, this is neither the time nor the place. Go home, Richard. You've had too much to drink. Stare at her, stunned. She isn't just lying. She's gaslighting me. Acting like I'm the one who's done something wrong. Before I can respond, one of her colleagues steps in. Tall guy with expensive cufflinks. Perfect white teeth smile. Everything okay here? He asks. Voice polite but firm. Everything's fine, Elizabeth says quickly. Her voice sickly sweet. My husband was just leaving. No, snap back. Shake off the man's hand when he reaches for my shoulder. I'm not leaving. Not until she explains what I just saw. The man looks between us. Clearly uncomfortable. Maybe you two should take this outside, he suggests. Great idea, glare at Elizabeth. Let's go. Right now. She hesitates, her jaw tightening. Finally downs the rest of her martini. Marches toward the exit. Outside, the cold November air hits like a slap. Elizabeth stands a few feet away, arms crossed over her designer dress. Her breath visible in the frosty night. She turns to face me, eyes sharp and unyielding. Are you happy now? She snaps. You've embarrassed both of us in front of my colleagues. God, Richard, why can't you just stop? Stop? My voice cracks, raw with anger. I want the truth, Elizabeth. Who was that guy? Her red lips part, but no sound comes out. For a moment, think she might actually tell me, but then she shakes her head. Her expression twisting into something colder, harder. This is ridiculous, she says. I'm going back inside. She brushes past me, her shoulder colliding with mine. Watch her go. The weight of her betrayal settling over me like concrete. The woman I thought I knew, the life I thought we had, it was all a lie. And for the first time I realize, this is only the beginning. Don't follow her back inside. Not at first. The cold air stings my face. Stand there watching her disappear. Through the glass doors. Back into the crowd. My fists are clenched so tight, nails digging into my palms. Every instinct screams at me to demand answers. But I know Elizabeth won't give them. Not willingly. Not here. Need a moment to breathe. To think. Lean against the marble railing. Staring out at the city lights. Part of me still wants to believe that it isn't real. That I didn't see what I just saw. But the image of her, stepping out of that bathroom, hair a mess, lipstick smeared, with that man's smug grin, still etched into my mind, refuses to let me escape. Check my phone, scroll through our messages from earlier. Nothing unusual. She'd sent me a quick text before the party. Don't be late tonight. This is important to me. Important to her. Not us. Not me. Just her. The irony hits me hard. I'd shown up for her tonight, despite hating every minute of it. And this is what I got in return. A knot of anger twists tighter in my chest. Can't let her walk away from this without facing what she's done. March back into the party. The noise hits me like a wave. The jazz music and chatter crashing against my already raw nerves. Elizabeth is back at the bar, champagne flute in hand, laughing too loudly with her coworkers. She's good, so good at pretending, like nothing had happened. But I'm not going to let her keep pretending. Elizabeth, say it sharp, my voice cutting through the noise. Her head snaps toward me. The smile slips from her face. Richard, she hisses, her tone low and sharp. What are you doing? We need to talk. Try keeping voice steady. But the edge of anger creeps in. Her colleagues glance between us, their polite smiles turning awkward. Maybe you should take a minute, one of them says. But ignore him. Now, Elizabeth, repeat firmly. She shoots me a look of pure annoyance after a tense beat, sets her champagne down, follows me toward the exit. Step outside again. The city sounds fill the silence between us. The cold night air doesn't cool. The heat building in my chest. What the hell was that? Demand, turning to face her. Don't try to deny it, Elizabeth. I saw you. I heard you. Her arms crossed defensively, her gaze hard as granite. You're overreacting, Richard, she says, her voice steady but laced with contempt. I was talking to him. That's all. Talking? Laughed bitterly, the sound cutting through the night. In a locked bathroom, with your hair a mess and his tie undone? Do you think I'm stupid? She doesn't flinch. If anything, she leans into her defiance. It's not what you think, she says coolly. And even if it was, you're not exactly the picture of perfection. In this marriage, are you? Her words hit me like a slap. What's that supposed to mean? She shrugs, her expression unreadable. You've been distant, Richard. Preoccupied. It's like you don't even see me anymore. Maybe if you paid more attention, I'm just saying, maybe you should think about your role in all this. My role? Stare at her, my anger boiling over. My role was trusting you. My role was showing up for you tonight, even when I didn't want to. My role was loving you and believing that you were the person you claimed to be, but clearly that was a mistake. Her jaw tightens. For a moment, thinks she might actually break, might actually show a flicker of guilt or remorse, but instead she turns away, her shoulders stiff. I don't have to listen to this, she mutters, starting to walk back toward the party. Grab her arm, not hard, just enough to stop her. No, Elizabeth, you don't get to walk away from this. Not this time. She wrenches her arm free, her eyes flashing with anger. I'm not doing this here, she snaps. If you want to throw a tantrum, do it at home. Take a deep breath. Try to steady myself. Fine, but don't think this is over. Not by a long shot. She doesn't respond. Just turns and walks back into the party, leaving me standing there alone. The weight of her betrayal pressing down on me like concrete. Don't follow her this time. Can it? Instead, turn and walk away, each step feeling heavier than the last. Back home, our luxury condo feels colder, emptier than usual. Pace the living room. The anger and hurt swirling inside me. This isn't just about what happened tonight. It's about everything. The lies, the distance, the way she turned herself into a stranger, right in front of me. Can't let it go. Not without answers. Pick up her MacBook from the mahogany desk, my hands shaking. Elizabeth is smart, too smart to leave an obvious trail. But no one is perfect. And if she won't tell me the truth, I'll find it myself. The house is silent, save for the vintage clock ticking. In the living room, it's the kind of quiet that makes every sound sharper, every movement feel heavier. Sit on the edge of the Italian leather couch, her laptop on the glass coffee table in front of me. My hands hover over the keyboard. Hesitant, part of me still wants to believe this is a misunderstanding, that I won't find anything. But the other part, the part that watched her walk out of that bathroom with another man, knows better. Open her laptop, Her password is still the same. Our wedding date. She hadn't even bothered to change it. That fact alone makes my stomach turn. Either she didn't care enough to cover her tracks, or she thought I'd never dare to look. The desktop is clean, almost too clean. Start with her emails, scanning through the usual flood. Promotional junk, work memos, family updates. At first, nothing seems out of ordinary, but then notice a folder buried in her inbox, labeled archived. Click it, my heart pounding. Inside are dozens of emails. No explicit details, no obvious confessions, but the tone is unmistakable. Warm, intimate. They talk about work projects, late nights, drinks after meetings. And then further down the thread, a single line that hits me like a freight train. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. Stare at the screen, my vision tunneling. The words blur, the weight of them crushing. Read the message again and again, as if repetition might somehow dull its impact. But it doesn't. It only sharpens the pain. Who the hell is Jonathan? Don't recognize the name. Elizabeth has never mentioned him, but I'm going to find out. Spend the rest of the night digging. Comb through her social media, her text messages, even her calendar. There isn't much. Elizabeth is careful, meticulous, but no one is perfect. And then I find it. Her calendar has recurring events, blocked out every Wednesday. For the last 3 months, the entries are vague. Meeting, errands, doctor, always the same 3-hour window. Always on Wednesday. Open the location sharing app. We'd installed on our phones years ago for safety reasons. Not something I checked often, if ever. But tonight it feels like my only lifeline. Pull up her history. For the past few Wednesdays, my stomach drops as I see the pattern. She wasn't at work. She wasn't running errands. She wasn't at the doctor. She was at a hotel. The address clear as day. Logged by the app, the Waldorf Astoria. On the other side of town, far from her office, or any place she'd normally go. The timestamps match perfectly with her calendar blocks. Not going to confront her without more proof. She's too good at twisting the narrative. Too good at making me question myself. If I accuse her now, she'll find a way to turn it back on me. Need something undeniable? Pick up my phone. Call Peter, an old friend from university. Peter's a private investigator, one of the best in Boston. We haven't talked much over the years, but know he'll help me. Richard, Peter answers, groggy, his voice thick with sleep. It's 6:30 in the morning. What's going on? Need a favor, say it, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. It's about Elizabeth. I think she's seeing someone. There's a pause on the other end, then a sigh. Are you sure? Yes, say it firmly. I just need proof. Peter doesn't ask any more questions. Send me what you've got, he says. I'll start today. The next few days are a blur. Elizabeth acts like nothing happened. She laughs, smiles, kisses me on the cheek before leaving for work. Like everything is normal, but can see the cracks in her facade. She's more guarded, more careful with her phone. And when Wednesday rolls around, she's gone during that same 3-hour window. Peter calls me late that evening. Richard, he says, his voice low. I've got something. Grip the phone tightly. What is it? She met someone, he says. A man. They had dinner at Le Petit Bistro downtown, then went to the Waldorf. I've got photos. My breath catches. Photos? Yeah, Peter says. It's pretty clear, Richard. I'm sorry. He doesn't have to say more. Know what he means? The weight of it all presses down. Suffocating. Send them to me, managed to say. Are you sure? He asks. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. I'm sure, say it. My voice hollow. A minute later, the photos come through. My phone buzzes with notifications. Elizabeth, smiling, laughing, leaning in close to a man I don't recognize. The same man from the emails. Jonathan, and then the final photo. The two of them entering the Waldorf together, his hand on the small of her back. The photos burn into my mind. Long after I close my phone, they aren't explicit, just moments frozen in time. But they don't need to be. The way she leans into him, the ease in her smile, the way his hand rests possessively on her back, it all tells a story I can't ignore. This isn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It's deliberate, calculated betrayal in its purest form. Spend hours pacing the condo. My thoughts a chaotic mess. The air feels heavier, thicker, like the walls themselves are closing in. The memories of our life together flash before me. The vacations, the late night talks, the promises we made, all of it now feels tainted. Hollow? By the time Elizabeth comes home, I'm sitting on the couch, the photos pulled up on my phone. She walks in, her Louboutin heels clicking against the hardwood floor, her face lighting up with a practiced smile. Hey, she says, setting her Prada bag on the marble counter. You're up late? Stare at her. my chest tight with a mix of anger and pain. We need to talk. Her smile falters. About what? Hold up my phone. The screen facing her. The color drains from her face. As she sees the image, for a moment she stands frozen, her eyes darting between the phone and me. Care to explain this? Ask. My voice steady but cold. Elizabeth's mouth opens and closes. No words coming out. Then like a switch had flipped, she straightens her posture, crosses her arms. What were you doing going through my stuff? Laugh bitterly. That's your response. You don't even try to deny it? There's nothing to deny, she says sharply. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like? Shoot back. Rising from the custom leather sofa, because it looks like my wife has been sneaking around with another man. For months, her jaw tightens. For a second, I see a flicker of guilt in her eyes. But then she shakes her head, her expression hardening. You've been distant, Richard. You don't pay attention to me anymore. What did you think was going to happen? Freeze, her words hitting me like a punch to the gut. You're blaming this on me? I'm not blaming anyone, she says, her voice rising, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestures angrily. I'm just saying that maybe if you cared a little more, if you weren't always so wrapped up in your own world, we wouldn't be here. Stare at her, disbelief washing over me. Are you even listening to yourself? I trusted you. I loved you. And this is how you repay me. She rolls her eyes, her tone dripping with disdain. You're being dramatic? Dramatic? My voice cracks as I struggle to keep my composure. You lied to me. You cheated on me. And you have the audacity. Her face hardens. I'm not having this conversation with you right now. She turns to walk away toward our bedroom, but step in front of her, blocking her path. No, you don't get to walk away from this. Not this time. You're going to stand here and face what you've done. Elizabeth glares at me, her eyes narrowing. The emerald earrings I bought her last Christmas, glinting in the dim light. What do you want me to say, Richard? That I'm sorry? Fine, I'm sorry. But maybe if you weren't so damn boring, I wouldn't have felt the need to. Don't snap, cutting her off. Don't you dare finish that sentence. For a moment, the room is silent, the tension between us thick and suffocating. She looks at me, her expression unreadable. And for the first time, I see her for who she really is. Not the woman I fell in love with. Not the partner I thought I had. A stranger. Cold. Calculating. Manipulative. I'm done, say it finally. My voice quieter now, but no less firm. You've made your choices, Elizabeth. Now I'm making mine. What's that supposed to mean? She asks. Her tone defensive, standing there in her Chanel dress, the one she wore to her company gala. It means we're done, say it. I'll call a lawyer in the morning. You can explain this mess to them. She stares at me, her eyes widening slightly, the perfectly applied mascara, making them look even more dramatic. You're being ridiculous. No, Elizabeth, shake my head. I've been patient. I've been understanding, but I won't be a fool. Not anymore. The rest of the night passes in a blur. Elizabeth locks herself in the master bedroom, and I stay in the living room, too wired to sleep. Email Peter, thanking him for his help. Begin drafting a message to a divorce attorney I'd found online. Each word feels like a step toward reclaiming my life, a life that had been overshadowed by her lies for far too long. When the sun finally rises, feel a strange mix of exhaustion and clarity. The road ahead won't be easy. Know that Elizabeth won't go quietly, and there's still so much to untangle. But for the first time in months, maybe even years, I feel like I can breathe. The morning after the confrontation feels surreal. Sit at the kitchen island, a cup of artisanal coffee, growing cold in my hands. The weight of the previous night hangs heavy in the air, and the silence in our penthouse is deafening. Elizabeth is still in the bedroom. Haven't heard a sound from her since she stormed off. Good. Don't have the energy for another round of her excuses and deflections. Open my laptop, stare at the email I had drafted for the divorce attorney. The cursor blinks at me, waiting, with a deep breath. Press send. It's a small action, but it feels monumental, like the first step toward taking my life back. A soft creak breaks the silence. As Elizabeth emerges from the bedroom, her hair is still a mess, her face devoid of her usual perfect makeup. She doesn't look like the poised, polished woman who had walked out of that bathroom with another man just hours ago. She looks tired, vulnerable, but can't let myself be swayed. She stops in the doorway, her silk robe wrapped tightly around her, arms crossed. So this is it then? She says, her voice sharp. Don't look up from my cold coffee. You made your choices, Elizabeth. Now we deal with the consequences. She scoffs, stepping further into the kitchen, the morning light from the floor-to-ceiling windows casting shadows across her face. Don't act like this is all on me, Richard. You weren't exactly a perfect husband. Set my Versace mug down, finally meeting her gaze. I never claimed to be perfect, but I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't destroy what we built. Her jaw tightens, but she doesn't respond. For a moment, thinks she might apologize, might show some shred of remorse. Instead, she turns, her back to me, walks to the Sub-Zero fridge, pulling out a bottle of Fiji water. You're throwing everything away. Over a misunderstanding, she says, twisting the cap off with a sharp motion. Misunderstanding, laugh bitterly. Elizabeth, I have photos. I have emails. I have a private investigator's report. Do you really want to stand there and tell me this is a misunderstanding? Her face pales slightly, but she recovers quickly, her expression hardening. Fine, she says, her tone icy. If you want to play the victim, go ahead, but don't expect me to feel sorry for you. Lean back in my chair, studying her. The woman standing in front of me isn't the woman I had married, or maybe she was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. Either way, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't need your pity, Elizabeth, say it. I just need you out of my life. Her eyes flash with anger. You think it's that simple? You think you can just cut me out, like I'm nothing? Yes, say it firmly. That's exactly what I think. She opens her mouth to retort, but the sound of my phone buzzing interrupts her. Glance at the screen. It's Peter, the private investigator. I need to take this, say, standing up from the marble island. We done here? Leave her standing in the kitchen. Step outside onto the balcony. The crisp morning air stings my face, but it's a welcome relief from the suffocating tension inside. Peter, say it, answering the call. What's up? I've got more, he says, his voice serious. I look deeper into this Jonathan guy. He's not just some random fling, Richard. He's connected. Connected how? Ask, my stomach tightening. He's a client of Elizabeth's firm, Peter explains. High profile. Lots of money. If this comes out, it could get messy. Not just for her, but for you too. Rub my temples, the weight of the situation, pressing down on me. What are you saying? I'm saying you need to be careful, Peter says. If this goes to court, they'll dig into everything. Finances, assets, your history, everything. And with Jonathan involved, Elizabeth's going to fight dirty. To protect herself, close my eyes. Try to process what he's saying. This isn't just a betrayal. It's a power play. Elizabeth isn't just my wife anymore. She's my adversary now. When I walk back into the penthouse, Elizabeth is waiting for me, her arms crossed over her silk robe, her eyes sharp. Who was that? She demands. None of your business, say it. Brushing past her, she follows me into the living room, her voice rising. You're talking to someone, aren't you? A lawyer? An investigator? You think you can just blindside me? Turn to face her, my anger bubbling to the surface. Blindside you, Elizabeth? I'm the one who's been blindsided here. I'm the one picking up the pieces of the life you tore apart. Her lips curl into a sneer, the morning light harsh on her face. Don't act like some saint, Richard. You've been distant for years. If anyone's to blame for this, it's you. Shake my head, disbelief and frustration coursing through me. You know what? I'm done arguing with you. Go ahead. Blame me. Lie to yourself. If that makes it easier, but I'm done. For the first time, her facade cracks. Her eyes glisten with unshed tears. And for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw the woman I loved. But the moment passes, and her expression hardens again. This isn't over, she says, her voice low. You're right, reply. It's not, but it will be. That evening, pack a bag and leave the penthouse. Staying there feels like suffocating. In a room filled with smoke, need air, space, clarity. Check into the Ritz-Carlton. Across town, the irony not lost on me. But it's a temporary measure, a place to regroup and figure out my next move. As I lay in the unfamiliar king-size bed, staring at the ornate ceiling, feel an odd mix of relief and dread. The battle is just beginning, and I know Elizabeth isn't going to make it easy. But for the first time, I feel like I have control, and I'm not going to let her take that from me. The next morning, wake up in the hotel room, feeling disoriented. For a moment, forget where I am, and then the reality of my situation hits me like a freight train. The bed I'm lying in isn't mine. The penthouse I'd left behind is no longer a home, and the woman I'd shared my life with is now an enemy. After a quick shower, in the marble bathroom, sit on the edge of the bed and open my laptop. The divorce attorney I'd contacted had already responded to my email, scheduling a consultation for later that day. Can't avoid it anymore. Elizabeth had made her move, and now it was my turn. The office of Alexandra Chase. The attorney is a sharp contrast to the chaos in my life. Sleek Italian furniture, Minimalist decor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. An air of professionalism. That makes me feel simultaneously at ease and on edge. Alexandra greets me with a firm handshake, her Hermes scarf perfectly draped, leads me into her corner office. "Richard," she says, gesturing for me to sit in a leather chair. "I've read your email. I'm sorry you're going through this, but it's good that you're taking action. Let's start with the basics." Give her a rundown of the situation. The photos, the emails, the lies. She listens intently, taking notes on a Mont Blanc pad. "And this man, Jonathan," she says, tapping her fountain pen against the pad. "Do you know anything about him?" "Not much, admit. He's a client of Elizabeth's firm. That's all I've got so far." She frowns, leaning back in her ergonomic chair. "That complicates things. If he's connected to her work, it could affect the division of assets. And if their affair is public knowledge, it might damage her career. And by extension, her leverage. I'm not looking to destroy her, say it, though the bitterness in my voice betrays my words. I just want out." Alexandra nods, her Cartier watch catching the morning light. "I understand, but you need to be prepared for a fight. If Elizabeth feels cornered, she'll come after you hard. We need to document everything. Every interaction, every asset, every inconsistency. Do you have access to joint financial accounts, property records, anything that could show her movements or spending?" "I do," say it. "We have a joint account. I've also got copies of her emails and texts." "Good," she says. "Gather everything. And one more thing, stay calm. She's going to try to provoke you, to paint you as the aggressor. Don't give her that ammunition." Nod, my chest tightening. "What happens next?" Alexandra's expression is firm. "We file. It's going to get messy, Richard. But if we're smart, we'll come out ahead." When I left Alexandra's office, felt a strange mix of relief and dread. The wheels were in motion now, and there was no turning back. Spent the rest of the day gathering documents, bank statements, emails, even photos of our penthouse. For the property records, every item I collected felt like another piece of my life being dismantled. That evening, called Peter, my private investigator, to update him. "I'm filing," say it, pacing the Ritz-Carlton suite. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. "You're sure?" Peter asks. "Positive," say it. "I've got his home address, his wife's name, even photos of them together. If you're looking for leverage, this might be it." Leverage. The word felt dirty, but couldn't ignore its weight. This wasn't just about me and Elizabeth anymore. There was another life, another family being torn apart by the same man who had invaded mine. "Thanks, Peter," say it, my mind racing. "I'll figure out what to do with this." That night, stare at the photos Peter had sent. Jonathan smiling with his wife, and 2 young daughters, standing in front of what looked like a vacation home in Nantucket. They looked happy, oblivious to the destruction happening behind the scenes. Debated for hours whether to reach out to her. Part of me wanted to warn her, to give her the chance, to confront Jonathan, the way I had confronted Elizabeth. But another part of me hesitated. Would it make me any better than them? Would I just be dragging someone else into the same pain I was drowning in? As I mulled over my phone, it buzzes. It's a text from Elizabeth. "We need to talk. Come home tomorrow." Stare at the message, my anger flaring. She wasn't asking for a conversation. She was demanding it. But there was no way. I was walking into her trap unprepared. Type a short reply. "You want to talk? We'll do it through lawyers." Her response comes almost instantly. "Don't be like this, Richard. We can figure this out." Without making it ugly, laughed bitterly. Tossing the iPhone 13 Pro onto the hotel bed. It was already ugly, and Elizabeth knew it. She wasn't reaching out because she wanted to fix things. She was trying to manipulate me, to pull me back under her control. But I wasn't going to let that happen. The next morning, meet with Alexandra again. Show her the information Peter had uncovered about Jonathan. She leans back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "This changes things," she says. "If Jonathan's wife gets involved, it could tip the scales in your favor, but it's a risky move. Are you ready for that?" Think about Jonathan's wife, her smiling face in the photos, and the life she thought she had. She deserved to know the truth. And if it helped me expose Elizabeth's lies, then so be it. "I'm ready," say it, my voice steady. "All right," Alexandra says. "Let's move forward." The plan was set in motion. The next day, Alexandra crafted a carefully worded letter to Jonathan's wife, explaining the situation with as much tact as possible. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about clarity, ensuring no one else was left in the dark. While Elizabeth and Jonathan operated in the shadows, Alexandra sent the letter via certified mail, ensuring it would land directly in the hands of its intended recipient. Wasn't sure how Jonathan's wife, Catherine, would react. Would she dismiss it as a lie, confront him, or would she contact me directly? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I forced myself to focus. On the steps ahead, back at the Ritz-Carlton, got another text from Elizabeth that evening. Ignoring me won't solve anything. Come home. She was relentless, but her tone had shifted. The sharpness from her previous messages had been replaced with something softer. Desperation. Fear? It didn't matter. I wasn't falling for it. Send her another curt reply. Talk to my lawyer. My phone buzzes again. Almost immediately, you're seriously going to throw everything away over this? We've been through too much. To end it like this? Throw everything away. The irony of her words makes my chest tighten. Turn the phone off. Toss it onto the silk sheets. I wasn't going to let her twist the narrative anymore. The following day, get a call from Peter. She got the letter, he says. Without preamble, Catherine asked, my stomach nodding. Yeah. I followed up. She confronted Jonathan this morning. Let's just say he didn't handle it well. What does that mean? Ask, gripping the phone tighter. It means their marriage is imploding, Peter says. She's furious, Richard. She might reach out to you. Wasn't sure whether to feel relief or dread. Thanks, Peter. After we hung up, tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting. Would Catherine really contact me? What would I say if she did? Later that evening, my phone rings. The number unfamiliar, but know who it is before I even answer. Richard, a woman's voice, steady but strained. This is Catherine. I got your lawyer's letter. Hesitate. Catherine, I don't apologize. She interrupts. I'm not calling to yell at you. I'm calling to, I don't even know. Make sense of this, I guess. Her voice cracks slightly. Feel a pang of guilt. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Say it softly. But I thought you deserved to know. Did you know? She asks. Did you know about them before this? Take a deep breath. Standing by the panoramic window of my hotel suite. I suspected. I hired a private investigator. That's how. She's silent for a moment. How long has it been going on? At least 3 months, say it. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's been longer. Her sharp intake of breath cuts through the line. 3 months, she repeats, her voice shaking. While he was telling me, we were fixing things. God, I'm so stupid. No, you're not, say it firmly. They're the ones who did this, not you. Catherine exhales, a bitter laugh. Well, at least now I know why he's been so distant, why he suddenly had all these late-night meetings. Her pain mirrors my own, and for a moment we're silent, connected by the shared betrayal. Finally, she speaks again, her tone hardening. What are you going to do? Divorce her, say it simply. I've already started the process. Good, she says. I'm doing the same. Her resolve is palpable, and it gives me strength. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Same to you, she says. And Richard, thank you for telling me. The fallout came swiftly. Within days, news of Elizabeth and Jonathan's affair began to spread, starting with whispers at her firm. Apparently, Catherine hadn't held back in confronting Jonathan, and their explosive argument had spilled into public view. Alexandra called me a few days later with an update. Elizabeth's lawyer reached out, she says, in her measured tone. They're trying to settle quickly. Settle? Asked surprised, staring out at the Boston skyline from my hotel balcony. They know they're in a weak position, Alexandra says. Between the photos, the emails, and now Jonathan's imploding marriage, they want to avoid this going to court. Leaned back in the teak chair, processing her words. Elizabeth was folding, the woman who had always fought to maintain control, who had manipulated and twisted the truth to suit her needs, was now on the defensive. What do they want? Ask. They're offering a clean split of assets. No alimony, Alexandra says. Honestly, it's more than fair, but I think we can push for more. If you're willing, consider her words. Part of me wanted to fight, to take Elizabeth for everything she had. But another part, one that was tired, drained, just wanted it to be over. Take the deal, say finally. I just want to move on. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork and legal meetings. Elizabeth and I communicated only through our lawyers, which suited me fine. Didn't want to see her, didn't want to hear her voice. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. When the divorce was finalized, felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, sadness, anger. But above all, I felt free. Free from her lies, her manipulation, her betrayal. That night, sat alone in my new luxury apartment, a modest place I'd rented. In Back Bay, it wasn't much, but it was mine. Pour myself a glass, of 18-year-old Macallan and raise it to the empty room. To new beginning, say it, the words quiet but firm, for the first time in a long time. I felt hope moving into my new apartment. Felt like stepping into a different life. It was smaller than the penthouse Elizabeth and I had shared. Simpler, but it was mine. No reminders of her. No ghosts of the life we built, only to watch crumble. Unpack slowly, methodically, each box feeling like a step toward reclaiming my identity. At first, the silence was unnerving. The quiet pressed against me, amplifying the thoughts I tried to suppress. But over time, the stillness became comforting, a space where I could think clearly, where I could breathe, throw myself into work, taking on extra projects and late hours. It was a distraction, yes, but it was also grounding. My colleagues noted the change, and a few asked if everything was all right. Give them vague answers about reorganizing priorities and making some changes. The truth felt too raw to share. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, Catherine reached out again. She called late one evening. Her voice carried a mix of exhaustion and resolve. "Hey, Richard," she says, "I just wanted to thank you again for telling me the truth. It wasn't easy, but it was the right thing." "How are you holding up?" I ask. Leaning back on my Italian leather sofa, she sighs. "It's been a whirlwind. Jonathan's been trying to spin the story, saying it was just a mistake, a one-time thing. But I know better now. I filed for divorce." "I'm sorry," say it quietly. "It's not fair. None of this is—" "No, it's not," she agrees. "But I'd rather face the truth than live in a lie." Her words stuck with me. Long after the call ended, she was right. The truth hurt, but it was liberating. Living in the lie Elizabeth had built would have suffocated me eventually. Slowly begin to rebuild my life. Join a local rowing club, down by Charles River. The first few sessions are grueling, but the physical challenge cleared my mind. In a way, nothing else could. Start therapy too. Was skeptical at first, but it helped to talk to someone who wasn't involved, who could help me process the anger and pain without judgment. Friends and family rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. My brother Lucas, who lived in Chicago, called regularly to check in. My best friend Henry insisted on dragging me out for craft beers at Trillium Brewing, at least once a week. Their support reminded me that I wasn't as alone as I sometimes felt. One Saturday morning, as I sat in Thinking Cup Cafe with my MacBook Pro, trying to catch up on some work, a woman approached my table. She was about my age, with kind eyes and an easy smile, wearing a Lululemon running outfit. "Excuse me," she says. "Are you using that chair?" Shake my head, gesturing for her to take it. She pulls it over to her table, but before she sits down, she glances at me again. "You look familiar," she says. "Have we met before?" "Don't think so," reply, though her face did seem vaguely familiar. "Do you row with the Charles River Club?" she asks. "Yeah," say surprised. "I just started a few weeks ago." She smiles. "Thought so. I've seen you there." "I'm Sophia." "Richard," say. Returning the smile, we chatted briefly about the rowing club and upcoming regattas before she returned to her table. It was a small interaction, but it left me feeling lighter for the first time in months. Felt like I was connecting with someone, not as a man caught in the aftermath of betrayal, but as just me. Over the next few weeks, saw Sophia more often, both at Thinking Cup and during rowing sessions. We'd exchange friendly banter, talk about work, hobbies, and sometimes deeper things, like the challenges of starting over. She'd been through her own share of hardships, though she didn't delve into details, and I didn't press. There was a mutual understanding, an unspoken respect for each other's boundaries. One evening, after a particularly intense rowing session, she invited me to join a few of the club members for drinks at Oaklawn Bar. Hesitated, but something in her easy demeanor made me say yes. That night, surrounded by laughter and conversation, in the elegant bar, realized how long it had been since I felt truly present. Sophia was part of that, her warmth and sincerity, a quiet balm to my still healing wounds. The months passed, and the pieces of my life began to fit together. In new ways, Sophia and I grew closer. Though we took things slowly, there were no grand gestures, no sweeping declarations, just a steady, genuine connection that felt unlike anything I'd known before. With her, there were no games, no secrets, no shadows lurking in the corners, just honesty. One evening, as we walked through the public garden, after a group rowing session, she turned to me with a soft smile. "You've changed," she says. "How do you mean?" ask. "Curious. When I first met you, you seemed guarded, like you were carrying something heavy. But now you seem lighter, like you've let go of whatever it was. Pause. Her words sinking in. She was right. The weight of Elizabeth's betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak. It was still there, but it no longer defined me. I had found something stronger within myself, something that couldn't be taken away. Yeah, say smiling back. I think I have. That night, as I drove Sophia home, in my new Audi RS7, realized how much lighter my life had become. The betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak. They hadn't disappeared, but they felt like distant echoes. Reminders of a storm I had weathered and survived. Meanwhile, my professional life was thriving, throwing myself into work after the divorce had paid off. My efforts hadn't gone unnoticed. My boss pulled me aside one afternoon in her corner office overlooking the harbor and offered me a promotion, head of strategic development, with more responsibility and a significant pay increase. It felt like validation, proof that even in the midst of chaos, I had managed to keep moving forward. With the promotion came an opportunity to relocate. The company was opening a new branch in Vancouver, and they wanted me to lead the team. It was a big change, but one that felt right. Needed a fresh start, a clean slate where the shadows of the past couldn't reach me. When I told Sophia about the offer, her reaction surprised me. You should take it, she says, without hesitation. We're sitting at her favorite spot, L'Espalier, the soft candlelight dancing. Across her face, what about us? Ask her, caught off guard. She smiles, taking a sip of her Bordeaux. I'm not saying goodbye, Richard. I'm saying you should do what's best for you. And who knows? Maybe Vancouver isn't just your fresh start. It could be ours. Her words stayed with me, filling me with a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Sold my Back Bay apartment, packed my belongings, said my goodbyes. Sophia and I talked about the logistics of a long-distance relationship, but deep down, I knew we'd make it work. She was already planning visits, and I was leaving a space for her. In my future, the day I left for Vancouver, Sophia came to see me off at Logan International. As we stood at the gate, she wrapped her arms around me, her head resting against my chest, the scent of her Chanel No. 5 lingering in the air. Promise me one thing, she says, her voice muffled. Anything, reply. Don't look back, she says, pulling back to meet my eyes. You've already done enough of that. Look forward. That's where your life is now. Nod, her words striking a chord deep within me. I promise. As the plane ascended into the clouds, stare out the window, watching Boston below shrink into a patchwork of lights. For the first time in a long time, felt like I was flying toward something, not away from it. Vancouver was everything I had hoped for. The city's vibrant energy and fresh opportunities invigorated me, and the work was both challenging and fulfilling. My new penthouse in Cole Harbor, overlooking the mountains and ocean, became my sanctuary. Sophia visited often, taking long weekends to fly across the continent, her presence a reminder of the life I was building, one step at a time. One evening, as we walked along the seawall, she slipped her hand into mine and smiled. Do you ever regret leaving? Shake my head. Not for a second. The truth was, leaving wasn't just about escaping the past. It was about embracing the future, a future where betrayal and heartbreak no longer defined me, where love wasn't a game of manipulation, but a shared journey built on trust. Life in Vancouver brought a sense of renewal I hadn't realized I needed. Each day felt like a step away from the shadows of my past and into the light of something new. My morning started with a run along the seawall, the salty Pacific breeze, invigorating me for the challenges ahead. My evenings were filled with purpose, work that excited me, video calls with Sophia, and a growing circle of friends who welcomed me into the city like I'd always belonged there. The wounds from my marriage to Elizabeth were still there, of course, but they had become scars, reminders of what I'd survived and the strength I'd found. In the process, they no longer hurt as they once did. Instead, they pushed me forward, a quiet affirmation that I could handle whatever life threw at me. Sophia's visits became more frequent, and with each one, our connection deepened. We explored the city together, laughing as we navigated through quirky Gastown cafes, hidden Yaletown bookstores, and bustling Granville markets. One evening, as we stood on my balcony, looking out over the harbor, the Lions Gate Bridge lit up against the dusk. She turned to me with a thoughtful expression. Richard, she said softly, it could be mine too. If you're ready, she smiled, slipping her hand into mine. I think I am. In the months that followed, Sophia began the process of moving to Vancouver. It wasn't easy. She had her own ties back in Boston, her own life to consider. But she made the leap, with the same quiet determination that had drawn me to her in the first place. By the time she arrived, I'd already set up space for her. In my penthouse, a home that finally felt complete. Living together was a learning curve, as all relationships are. But it was a different kind of challenge than what I'd known with Elizabeth. With Sophia, there were no games, no lies, no hidden agendas. We tackled each bump in the road together, with honesty and a shared commitment to making it work. One evening, as we sat on our Italian leather sectional, a movie playing in the background, the lights of the harbor twinkling beyond, Sophia turned to me. "Do you think we would have found each other if everything hadn't happened with Elizabeth?" she asked, her voice hesitant. Thought for a moment before answering. "I don't know," say honestly. "But I don't think it matters. What matters is that we're here now." She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Here's a pretty good place to be." While my personal life flourished, my professional life continued to grow. The new team I was leading exceeded expectations, and the projects we completed garnered recognition, not just within the company, but in the industry as a whole. One day, my boss called me into her corner office, overlooking English Bay, and offered me an executive role, a position that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. As I signed the contract, couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. The man who had been broken by betrayal and consumed by anger was gone. In his place was someone stronger, someone who had learned to find his worth, not in the validation of others, but in the life he had built for himself. One Saturday morning, as Sophia and I strolled through Stanley Park, she reached into her Hermes bag and pulled out an envelope. "This came for you," she said, handing it to me, glanced at the return address, and froze. It was from Elizabeth. Debated whether to open it, unsure if I wanted to invite her back into my life, even in this small way, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single page, her handwriting neat and deliberate, in Mont Blanc ink. "Richard, I heard about your move to Vancouver, and I just wanted to say, I'm glad you're doing well. I know I didn't deserve your kindness, and I know I caused you pain, but I hope you found the happiness I couldn't give you. Take care. Elizabeth." Read the letter twice, then folded it, and slipped it back into the envelope. Sophia watched me, her expression unreadable. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked gently. Shake my head, a small smile playing on my lips. "No, it's over." And it was Elizabeth's letter. While unexpected, didn't stir the anger or sadness it might have months ago. It felt like a closing chapter, a final acknowledgement of what had been and what would never be again. That evening, as Sophia and I sat on our balcony, watching the sunset over the North Shore Mountains, the last rays of light, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, I realized how far I'd come. The life I had now wasn't what I'd imagined for myself all those years ago, but it was better, it was real, it was mine.